wanted to have arrangements for that, they would be required to provide the service, but it would be a special cost that would be billed. Currently through the proposal would be billed by the supplier, not through the city office like their standard bill. That would be a secure arrangement between the service provider and the customer. Basically, there'd be we wouldn't serve as the middleman in that process. That also, as far as increases could go, for instance, for fuel cost changes or for tipping fee changes, or even for assessment changes out at the landfill, for instance, as we discussed that DNR issue. All of that would have to come through the council. Since we're doing the billing, it could not be passed on without council approval, any changes to the cost structure. Where that has usually been used for by the communities I talked to was when you're dealing with, of course, the $4.45 gas, diesel gas, or something along those lines, where that additional cost needs to be recouped. The last one, of course, is that the city continues. We, as the city, not our contractee, but we, as the city, would provide yard waste pickup under this agreement, the way this agreement is set up. You going to sleep on me?
Probably not me or.
Interesting.
There it is. Adam. It went.
Oh, that was Minnie. That was nice of it.
Oh, nice by them.
And that's the end of my
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's time I discussed the new computer.
While we're waiting for him to get where he's got to be on there, are there any comments, people?
Yeah, I would like to Rudd Sanitation, of course, lives just 4 miles off of town. We've been in the business for 31 years. We'd like the opportunity to come to your city. Your city administrator, before this Adam come here, would not let us in town for commercial or anything else. He didn't want us in town with our trucks. And so we've kind of kept our nose out of it. But if we want the opportunity to come to the city and present our bids, we'll work with you any way we can work with you. I guarantee you we can do it cheaper than you're doing it right now. We'll furnish whatever you need, we'll furnish. We'll do it. We got all kinds of trucks, got plenty of backup units, and we're not going to go out of business tomorrow. We've been at it for 30 years, and you can call the cities. We've got 5 or 6 cities around here we haul, and you can ask them what kind of service we provide. And like I say, we're only 4 miles from town. If somebody calls and needs, if we miss something or they need something special, call us and we'll be there.
Any other comments?
I like our local service real well, but I talked to a lady in Carroll County today, and she said just so many other towns around, like down in there, have gone to this. What you're thinking about doing with hiring somebody like Rudd's or some type like that. So what I wanted to ask too, doesn't this cemetery lawn mowing enter this picture somewhere?
There has been a discussion on that as being tied to this. One of the things that the Finance Committee was looking at was the prospects of taking back in the service rather than contracting out for it.
That's quite a sum there, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it is a significant amount of work. Bob can contest to that. There was some discussion at the last council meeting about that, and that was one of the impacts for one of the arguments of how we would deal with transfer of employee services from the trash department into providing those type of new services.
That kind of enter that picture too, as far as...
Right, and actually, I actually get to that towards later in the notes.
I'm sorry.
Well, let's go on then.
Sure.
Adam. I'm sorry. I thought if you were going to be a bit, we'd ask questions.
This is just these are pure estimates based upon the idea that we actually outsource the service under the terms that we have talked about. You'll see on there that there's still the landfill assessment takes into consideration. That is not the tipping fees, that is just the landfill assessment. You'll see salaries and benefits. That goes back to the yard waste pickup that we would continue to keep providing. Of course, commercial sales tax, you might see that also in revenues and expenses. That's a match, it's a wash, it's what we pay to our big brother. And then the next thing, of course, is the service contract. What I did for the purposes of these slides is I basically took cities like Early, Lytton, Auburn, all the cities that I had talked to, and roughly just built an average into the system to give you an idea of what the annual contract would cost for services there. You'll see that that comes out to a significant savings over what our expected expenses are. However, there's also a ramification. Our revenues are lower. The revenues are lower because of the result of the fact that we're no longer providing commercial service. So we had to count out the actual revenues that are included in the commercial service, providing commercial service. So it balances. You can see how it balances out there. And those are just estimates based upon the type of research we've been doing. Just some comments, and this is where it comes in, talking about the cemetery. This would be the discussion in the finance committee. It would be that with this outsourcing of the waste services, the city has considered retaining care of the and management of Oakland Cemetery. We've had some issues at different points over the last few years. And there has been talk of the possibility of us taking this back in to assure a certain degree, a certain quality of service is maintained. That is one of the things that we had planned in conjunction with this option. Another thing was, I would say that after surveying a lot of different communities on this issue, I got some mixed results, both on 2 points really. One was not only on the actual service itself, but 2 was on the transition. For any of them that had transitioned in the last 5 years, I could talk to them about what their transition had been like. When they had actually gone from providing their own service to going to a service provider, what type of problems they ran into. Because, quite frankly, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We can prevent some of the pitfalls that currently are caused when you go out and do this by understanding what kind of other problems other cities have seen. And then the last thing I built in here, and this really, to be honest, doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but it is at least a fact that I thought was worth even mentioning. And I talked to the League of Cities to get an idea of how many cities in the state actually provide commercial trash service for their residents. And they were telling me there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35% actually provide commercial service themselves. Cities like Ottumwa, for instance, which is a much larger community, but they don't even provide any service. In fact, I don't even think they include condos and townhouses and things of that nature, which, there's some questions about whether or not that counts as a residence or not. Just to give you an idea of the different cities that I talked to, you'll see that Early and Lytton, and I tried to talk to 2 or 3 others. It had a lot to do with how comfortable they were talking. I told all of them that I wouldn't share what they specifically said with us on a detailed basis, but just to give you an idea of some of the cities we actually talked to out there about their service. One of them that we were very interested in talking to is Denison, who just recently changed over service, and I was curious to hear how they had, what kind of pitfalls they had ran into. And that's basically it for this presentation. As I mentioned, you've got the request for proposal after our last discussion in your packets.
I got a few about the cemetery.
Yes.
What is the bid right now, currently, or what was it the last 2 years?
I think
24.
24 is the
My comment with that, I guess, I did the cemetery for 6 years, and prior to me doing it, maybe 10 years prior to that, the city was doing the cemetery. When did they stop doing that, Bob, as a guess? I did it like from 95 till 2000 or something. It was at least 6 years before that.
Oh, yeah.
If not more.
Could be more, because